Hello, back again, reading the next chapter in Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life by Marshall Rosenberg. If you're interested in this book, I have the Amazon link in the description. The next chapter I'm reading is called Taking Responsibility for Our Feelings, which is really important. And what we have to talk about has the potential to really change the way that you engage in conversations with the other people in your life, and especially in your romantic relationships. This chapter begins with a quote from Epictetus. Excuse my pronunciation. People are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them. A lot of the times, what happens in our important conversations with our loved ones is that we and they make interpretations and assumptions about what is being said. And frequently, both of us also communicate in ways that don't clearly express what we are actually feeling. So we're going to talk a bit about this here and now. I'm going to begin reading in just a moment. If you're interested in the other chapters from this book I've read, I've done a few live videos at this point today, just in the mood to read. And you can find those on my page, on my other social media places. All right. Taking responsibility for our feelings. The first section is called Hearing a Negative Message. 4 options. Usually I like to show you guys the cover of the book. So, this is the book we're reading. Again, taking responsibility for our feelings. Hearing a negative negative message, 4 options. The third component of nonviolent communication entails the acknowledgement of the root of our feelings. Nonviolent communication heightens our awareness that what others say and do may be the stimulus, but never the cause of our feelings. We see that our feelings result from how we choose to receive what others say and do, as well as from our particular needs and expectations in that moment. So how we interpret what people say and do, our opinions that we form about them, our assumptions, cause our feelings, although what was said or done is the stimulus. With this third component, we are led to accept responsibility for what we do to generate our own feelings. For those of you interested in the law of attraction or manifestation work, there is a lot to contemplate in this concept, even though we are focusing on communication. What others do may be the stimulus of our feelings, but not the cause. When someone gives us a negative message, whether verbally or non-verbally, we have 4 options as to how to receive it. One option is to take it personally by hearing blame and criticism. For example, someone is angry and says, "You're the most self-centered person I've ever met." Unfortunately, that might be something that's thrown around in, say, a conversation between you and your beloved. "You're the most self-centered person I've ever met." If choosing to take it personally, we might react, "Oh, I should have been more sensitive." We accept the other person's judgment and blame ourselves. Or I guess it would be more like, "Oh, I should have been more sensitive," responding with shame. We accept the other person's judgment and blame ourselves. We choose this option at great cost to our self-esteem, for it inclines us towards feelings of guilt, shame, and depression, and it injures the relationship overall. 4 options for receiving negative messages. The first one is to blame ourselves. The second option is to fault the speaker. For example, in response to "You're the most self-centered person I've ever met," We might protest, "You have no right to say that. I am always considering your needs. You're the one who is really self-centered." When we receive messages this way and blame the speaker, we are likely to feel anger. So too, the second way to receive a negative message is to blame others. Unfortunately, these first two options are the most common ways that we have been cultured and taught to respond to communications, especially in intimate relationships. And both injure our relationships and don't put us in touch with our needs or the other person's needs, and the opportunity for connection is lost. When receiving negative messages, our third option would be to shine the light of consciousness on our own feelings and needs. Obviously, it takes time to learn to not react emotionally, especially when we are accustomed to doing so. So in this third option, we might reply, "When I hear you say that I am the most self-centered person you've ever met, I feel hurt because I need some recognition of my efforts to be considerate of your preferences." By focusing attention on our own feelings and needs, we become conscious that our current feeling of hurt derives from a need for our efforts to be recognized. So 3, sense our own feelings and needs. The other person, occasionally, depending on where the other person is and what they're feeling, they might take the heat out of what they're saying by your expression of vulnerability, and they may change how they communicate, or they may persist, and nonviolent communication can help you navigate that as well. Finally, a fourth option on receiving a negative message is to shine the light of consciousness on the other person's feelings and needs as they are currently expressed. You might, for example, ask, after they've said, sorry, I lost my place, "You're the most self-centered person I've ever met." In this fourth option, we might say, "Are you feeling hurt because you need more consideration for your preferences?" So in that case, this can lead the conversation potentially forward into a productive space and create the opportunity for that to occur. So 4, sense others' feelings and needs. We accept responsibility for our feelings rather than blame other people by acknowledging our own needs, desires, expectations, values, or thoughts. Note the difference between the following expressions of disappointment. Example 1. A. You disappointed me by not coming over last evening. Versus B. I was disappointed when you didn't come over because I wanted to talk over some things that were bothering me. Think about how you imagine the other person respond, or if someone else were saying this to you, the difference in how you would respond to those statements. Speaker A attributes responsibility for his disappointment solely to the other person's action. Speaker B traces his feeling of disappointment to his own unfulfilled desire. Also, hello to everyone who's here. I am doing well, thank you, Amanda. I hope you are well also, and I hope everyone you're watching as well. So responsibility is very important because we're not conscious of it, but when we criticize or blame other people, especially when we have an unfulfilled desire, we're attempting to pressure that person using judgment, guilt, shame, criticism into doing what we want them to do. And even if they were to respond the way we want, it would be from that negative place, and therefore the relationship would still be damaged. Because when you don't accept responsibility for your feelings, it kind of steals, robs other people of choice as well. Example 2. A. Their canceling the contract really irritated me. Versus B. When they canceled the contract, I felt really irritated because I was thinking to myself that it was an awfully irresponsible thing to do. Speaker A attributes her irritation solely to the behavior of the other party, whereas Speaker B accepts responsibility for her feeling by acknowledging the thought behind it. So it's clear that she thinks that this is an irresponsible thing, but not qualifying the action as a fact itself. She recognizes that her blaming way of thinking has generated her irritation. In nonviolent communication, however, we would urge the speaker to go a step further by identifying what she is wanting. What need, desire, expectation, hope, or value of hers has not been fulfilled. As we shall see, the more we are able to connect our feelings to our own needs, the easier it is for others to respond compassionately. I mean, depending on how your partner was talking to you, there's definitely ways of saying things, how they would express their feelings to you, where you would shut down and become defensive, and ways that they could say what they're really feeling that would make you feel open and want to fulfill the needs of someone you care about, or to negotiate that need. To relate her feelings to what she is wanting, Speaker B might have said, "When they canceled the contract, I felt really irritated because I was hoping for an opportunity to rehire the workers we laid off last year." Very specific and clear. It is helpful to recognize a number of common speech patterns that tend to mask accountability for our own feelings. In a really subtle way, our language divides us from responsibility and accountability. 1. Use of impersonal pronouns such as it and that. It really infuriates me when spelling mistakes appear in our public brochures. That bugs me a lot. 2. The use of the expression I feel, parentheses, an emotion, because blank, followed by a person or personal pronoun other than I. I feel hurt because you said you don't love me. I feel angry because the supervisor broke her promise. 3. Statements that mention only the actions of others. When you don't call me on my birthday, I feel hurt. Mommy is disappointed when you don't finish your food. In each of these instances, we can deepen our awareness of our own responsibility by substituting the phrase I feel or because I. So the earlier examples are like subtle ways where we are not actually accountable for the way we feel. So we would change this to take responsibility for our own feelings as following. 1. I feel really infuriated when spelling mistakes like that appear in our public brochures because I want our company to project a professional image. 2. I feel angry that the supervisor broke her promise because I was counting on getting that long weekend to visit my brother. 3. Mommy feels disappointed when you don't finish your food because I want you to grow up strong and healthy. Connect your feeling with your need. I feel blank because I need blank. The basic mechanism of motivating by guilt is to attribute the responsibility for one's own feelings to other people. So, like if you make it your partner's fault that you feel a certain way, you are guilting them into responding the way you want them to. And even if it works, your relationship is damaged, and that emotional damage does compound over time. Or they do it to you. When parents say, "It hurts mommy and daddy when you get poor grades at school," they are implying that the child's actions are the cause of the parent's unhappiness or happiness. On the surface, taking responsibility for the feelings of others can easily be mistaken for positive caring. It may appear that the child cares for the parent and feels bad because the parent is suffering. However, if children who assume this kind of responsibility change their behavior in accordance with parental wishes, they are not acting from the heart, but acting to avoid guilt. Distinguish between giving from the heart and being motivated by guilt or other forms of punishment. The next section is called the needs at the roots of feelings. Judgments, criticisms, diagnoses, and interpretations of others are all alienated expressions of our needs. If someone says, "You never understand me," they are really telling us that their need to be understood is not being fulfilled. Obviously, it takes work. So most of us are emotionally reactive, and it can be hard for us when we are accused in this way or when we hear criticism to take a moment to stop and not immediately react or blame ourselves or blame others, but to stop and think, what is this person really trying to express by saying this? If a wife says, "You've been working late every night this week. You love your work more than you love me," she is saying, or trying to say, is that her need for intimacy is not being met. Obviously, if she were instead to say, you've spent the last 6 weeks, you've spent 5 or more nights at work, and I would like you to spend more time with me at home. I have a need to feel emotionally connected to you. That hits rather differently from the prior statement. Judgments of others are alienated expressions of our own unmet needs. That's something to think about. Judgments of others are alienated expressions of our own unmet needs. When we express our needs indirectly through the use of evaluations, interpretations, and images, others are likely to hear criticism. And the same thing when people communicate this way to us, we are likely to hear criticism. And when people hear anything that sounds like criticism, they tend to invest their energy in self-defense or counterattack. This is why, I wanted to talk about this because we often don't know. Sometimes it can be really bewildering why our conversations with our loved ones always go so badly. This is usually the culprit. If we wish for a compassionate response from others, it is self-defeating to express our needs by interpreting or diagnosing their behavior. Instead, the more directly we can connect our feelings to our own needs, the easier it is for others to respond to us compassionately. They may not always do so, but you're far more likely to get the result you desire than if you make statements that others hear as attacks. If we express our needs, we have a better chance of getting them met. Unfortunately, most of us have never been taught to think in terms of needs. We are accustomed to thinking about what's wrong with other people when our needs aren't being fulfilled. Thus, if we want coats to be hung up in the closet, we may characterize our children as lazy for leaving them on the couch. Or we may interpret our coworkers as irresponsible when they don't go about their tasks the way we would prefer them to. I was once invited to Southern California to mediate between some landowners and migrant farm workers whose conflicts have grown increasingly hostile and violent. I began the meeting by asking these 2 questions. What is it that you are each needing? And what would you like to request of the other in relation to these needs? The problem is that these people are racist, shouted a farm worker. The problem is that these people don't respect law and order, shouted a landowner even more loudly. As is often the case, these groups were more skilled in analyzing the perceived wrongness of others than in clearly expressing their own needs. In a comparable situation, I once met with a group of Israelis and Palestinians who wanted to establish the mutual trust necessary to bring peace to their homelands. I opened the session with the same questions. What is it you're needing, and what would you like to request from one another in relation to those needs? Instead of directly stating his needs, a Palestinian Mukhtar, who's like a village mayor, answered, "You people are acting like a bunch of Nazis." A statement like that is not likely to get the cooperation of a group of Israelis. Almost immediately, an Israeli woman jumped up and countered, "Mukhtar, that was a totally insensitive thing for you to say." Here were people who had come together to build trust and harmony, much like 2 people in a relationship would like to do. But after only one interchange, matters were worse than before they began. This happens often when people are used to analyzing and blaming one another rather than clearly expressing what they need. In this case, the woman could have responded to the Mukhtar in terms of her own needs and requests by saying, for example, I am needing more respect in our dialogue. Instead of telling us how you think we are acting, would you tell us what it is we are doing that you find disturbing? And it's been my experience over and over again that from the moment people begin talking about what they need rather than what's wrong with one another, the possibility of finding ways to meet everybody's needs is greatly increased. The following are some of the basic human needs we all share. So I'm going to read this list. And if you've hung in to listen, I'd like you to listen to this list of basic human needs. Because, we're not really taught to be in touch with our feelings or what our actual needs are. So it can be interesting to hear this and to have words, language for the needs you're feeling, especially at this moment in your life, needs that you feel are being fulfilled, but also the needs you feel are not being fulfilled. Hearing something we're feeling being clearly articulated can be really eye-opening. So, basic human needs we all share. Autonomy, which includes to choose one's dreams, goals, and values, and to choose one's plan for fulfilling one's dreams, goals, and values. Celebration, to celebrate the creation of life and dreams fulfilled, and to celebrate losses, loved ones, dreams, etc., also known as mourning. Integrity, which is also authenticity, creativity, meaning, self-worth. Interdependence is a need, which also expresses itself as acceptance, appreciation, closeness, community, consideration, contribution to the enrichment of life, aka to exercise one's power by giving that which contributes to life. Emotional safety, empathy, honesty, the empowering honesty that enables us to learn from our limitations. Love, reassurance, respect, support, trust, understanding, and warmth. Play is a need, which is also fun and laughter. A need for spiritual communion, which is also beauty, harmony, inspiration, order, and peace. Physical nurturance, which is of course air, food, movement and exercise, protection from life-threatening forms of life, viruses, bacteria, insects, predatory animals. Rest, sexual expression, shelter, touch, and water. So it's just sort of an articulation of needs that we all share. Obviously, we have other needs as well. That's an interesting list to contemplate. The next section is the pain of expressing our needs versus the pain of not expressing our needs. In a world where we're often judged harshly for identifying and revealing our needs, doing so can be very frightening. And that is true. Sometimes not only are we not taught to be in touch with these things, but we can be actively discouraged from it or punished. Women, in particular, are susceptible to criticism. For centuries, the image of the loving woman has been associated with sacrifice and the denial of one's own needs to take care of others. Because women are socialized to view the caretaking of others as their highest duty, they often learn to ignore their own needs. And of course, this can be like men and other gender, anybody as well. And so this expresses itself in so many subtle, missable ways. At one workshop, we discussed what happens to women who internalize such beliefs for anyone. These women, if they ask for what they want, will often do so in a way that both reflects and reinforces the beliefs that that they have no genuine right to their needs and that their needs are unimportant. I'm going to read that again. Listen, even if you're not a woman, because it's important, like an idea of how we set ourselves up for failure and to not be heard. These women, if they ask for what they want, will often do so in a way that both reflects and reinforces the belief that they have no genuine right to their needs and that their needs are unimportant. And this is, speaking of like a law of attraction manifestation, this is the more subtle, practical things where this is a real way that our beliefs become manifest through the way we act and people respond to them. And this is literal things we can like practically change to change the results we get out of other people. So not everything about that is like magic, so to speak, but how we actually, our actual choices and how we are and live and act. Anyway, for example, an example of this, because she is fearful of asking for what she needs, a woman may fail to simply say that she's had a busy day, is feeling tired, and wants some time in the evening to herself, which is, by the way, perfectly valid. A perfectly valid thing to want. Instead, her words come out sounding like a legal case. I haven't had a moment to myself all day. I ironed all the shirts, did the whole week's laundry, took the dog to the vet, made dinner, packed the lunches, and called all the neighbors about the block meeting. So how about if you... No, comes the swift response. Her plaintive request elicits resistance rather than compassion from her listeners. They have difficulty hearing and valuing the needs behind her pleas, and furthermore react negatively to her weak attempt to argue from a position of what she should get, or deserves to get from them. In the end, the speaker is again persuaded that her needs don't matter, not realizing that they were expressed in a way unlikely to draw a positive response. And just to clarify, this is made more clear in other parts of the book. The reason why that's they are expressed in a way unlikely to draw a positive response is that the whole dialogue that I expressed there is frequently heard as criticism. So, say her partner hears her going on about all the things she did that day, he might internalize that as criticism, that he's not doing enough or feeling guilty for her having done so much. And it's just sort of a weird thing about human nature to sort of like resist or shut down and say no to offering help, which may not be it's not a positive way to respond, but that's sort of elaborating why it happens that way. He's not hearing that she just wants time to herself, because she doesn't feel like she deserves it, like she has to make a case for it rather than just asking or seeing that she's going to do it. If we don't value our needs, others may not either, unfortunately. My mother was once at a workshop where other women were discussing how frightening it is to be expressing their needs. Suddenly she got up and left the room and didn't return for a long time. She finally reappeared looking very pale. In the presence of the group, I asked, "Mother, are you all right?" "Yes," she answered, "but I just had a sudden realization that's very hard for me to take in." "What's that?" "I've just become aware that for 36 years, I was angry with your father for not meeting my needs. And now I realize that I never once clearly told him what I needed." My mother's revelation was accurate. Not one time that I can remember did she clearly express her needs to my father. She'd hint around and go through all kinds of convolutions, but never would she ask directly for what she needed. So like implying, hinting, expecting your partner to read your mind is not actually like clearly stating the need. We tried to understand why it was so hard for her to have done so. My mother grew up in an economically impoverished family. She recalled asking for things as a child and being admonished by her brothers and sisters. You shouldn't ask for that. You know we're poor. Do you think you're the only person in the family? Eventually, she grew to fear that asking for what she needed would only lead to disapproval and judgment. She related a childhood anecdote about one of her sisters who had an appendix operation and afterwards had been given a beautiful little purse by another sister. I see there's some comments. I'll read them after this story. She related a childhood anecdote about one of her sisters who had had an appendix operation afterwards had been given a beautiful little purse by another sister. My mother was 14 at the time. Oh, how she yearned to have an exquisitely beaded purse like her sister's, but she dared not open her mouth. So guess what? She feigned a pain in her side and went the whole way with her story. Her family took her to several doctors. They were unable to produce a diagnosis and so opted for exploratory surgery. It had been a bold gamble on my mother's part, but it worked. She was given an identical little purse. When she received the coveted purse, my mother was elated despite being in physical agony from the surgery. 2 nurses came in and one stuck a thermometer in her mouth. My mother said, to show the purse to the second nurse, who answered, "Oh, for me? Why, thank you," and took the purse. My mother was at a loss and never figured out how to say, "I didn't mean to give it to you. Please return it to me." Her story poignantly reveals how painful it can be when people don't openly acknowledge their needs. All right, I'm going to pause a moment. Also, hello to everyone. Cynthia shared a lengthy comment. I'm going to go ahead and read it since this will be posted in other places. She shares, "When I was married, I never thought about what my needs were, so I focused on fulfilling my husband's expectations. It would really help if they taught us things like this in school. I'm thinking now about how I let myself out. I was so focused on pleasing. I guess actually I thought if I made him happy, the things I want would come naturally. It didn't. I wish I would have spoken up." And that's a very poignant point you bring up, is that, hearing the things from this book can really sound sensible and like common sense, but, we're really, like I was saying, not only are we not taught to be in touch with our feelings and needs and how to get them met and to communicate them, and that we need to. Otherwise, there's a good chance that they won't be met, or that we need to take care of others to the exclusion of ourselves. Not only are we not educated, in some cases, we are actively cultured, punished, beaten into, or shamed, or guilted into doing the opposite, being out of touch, being codependent. And it leaves us feeling frustrated, unfulfilled, angry, embittered, and it's unfortunate because it makes it feel like the world's out to get us, or that other people don't care about us. And at least some of the time, if we knew how to communicate our needs and feelings, other people might have come through for us and helped us meet those needs. It's hard when we realize that we never gave others the opportunity to try, or we never had the opportunity to try. So I'm glad to be sharing this, because it is life-changing, and it can also radically change your relationships and save them, and it can totally change one's quality of life. And I find these ideas also very relevant to law of attraction. I hope to kind of bring all this stuff together as one cohesive concept later. I'm going to continue reading, but thank you so much for sharing that personal experience. I myself, over the last decade, have struggled with codependency, which is essentially just this kind of convoluted way of thinking of not being responsible for your feelings, but being responsible for other people's feelings. And So on, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the term, and even though I've been working on it all that time to overcome it, so I definitely appreciate this literature and the struggle of changing that. Even when you know about this stuff, it can be hard to stop yourself in the moment, to not react or to assert yourself. All right, I'll continue. From emotional slavery to emotional liberation. In our development toward a state of emotional liberation, most of us experience 3 stages in the way we relate to others. Stage 1. In this stage, which I refer to as emotional slavery, we believe ourselves responsible for the feelings of others. We think we must constantly strive to keep everyone happy. If they don't appear happy, we feel responsible and compelled to do something about it. This can easily lead us to see the very people who are closest to us as burdens. That's not healthy for our relationships. It damages them. Taking responsibility for the feelings of others can be very detrimental to intimate relationships. I routinely hear variations on the following theme. I'm really scared to be in a relationship. Every time I see my partner in pain or needing something, I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I'm in prison, that I'm being smothered, and I just have to get out of the relationship as fast as possible. For some people, this is a conscious dialogue, but consider that for some people, it's a subconscious dialogue. People can sabotage relationships or find excuses to leave or engage in bad behavior, for lack of better, quick terminology, in order to end the relationship because they feel guilt and shame and responsible for the other person, and that can be really subtle on their partner. May have no idea that that's what's happening in them, and they don't know that that's how they really feel. They just come up with excuses like, oh, my partner's so clingy and demanding, or they're never available, or I'm in love with someone else. This response is common among those who experience love as denial of one's own needs in order to attend to the needs of the beloved. In the early days of a relationship, partners typically relate joyfully and compassionately to each other out of a sense of freedom. The relationship is exhilarating, spontaneous, wonderful. Eventually, however, as the relationship becomes serious, partners may begin to assume responsibility for each other's feelings. If I were a partner who is conscious of doing this, I might acknowledge the situation by explaining, I can't bear it when I lose myself in relationships. When I see my partner's pain, I lose me, and I just have to break free. However, if I've not reached this level of awareness, I am likely to blame my partner for the deterioration of the relationship. Thus, I might say, my partner is so needy and independent, it's really stressing out our relationship, even though it's not what's actually happening. In such a case, my partner would do well to reject the notion that there's anything wrong with her needs. It would only make a bad situation worse to accept that blame, and sometimes that's what happens. You say, you're too needy, and they say, I am. Hi, love. Do you need something?
Well, I do have needs, but they are not pressing. So you could take more time if you need to. I am concerned about your well-being and would feel good about you eating soon. I did eat without you. I hope that's all right.
Yeah.
I'm done with my thing. So.
Great. I'm going to stop after this chapter. I'm not sure where I am in the chapter, so I'd like to finish.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I want to go.
Well.
So I can think of something myself, or if you think of things, it might help me. You don't have to, though.
I'll think, but I make no promises. Also, okay. I got the girls to finish the food.
Oh, well, good job. Thank you. Mm-hmm. It's just my wife. So, gosh. I usually talk a lot, because I do reading videos frequently, but this is a lot of talking even for me today, so I'm starting to feel a little hoarse. So this is going to be my last video for today. However, I'm going to finish this chapter. So sometimes, because one partner feels overwhelmed and like they're responsible for their partner and they don't want to be, because it makes them feel guilty, ashamed, and pressured, they put the blame on the other person by saying, oh, you're needy and dependent and clingy. And it gets worse if the person says, you're right, that's really bad of me, I'm terrible. Instead of doing that, she could offer an empathic response to the pain of my emotional slavery. So you find yourself in panic. It's very hard for you to hold on to the deep caring and love we've had without turning it into a responsibility, a duty, or obligation. You sense your freedom closing down because you think you constantly have to take care of me. If, however, instead of an empathic response, she says, are you feeling tense because I've been making too many demands on you? Then both of us are likely to stay enmeshed in emotional slavery, making it that much more difficult for the relationship to survive. And this is one of the many, many ways that we sabotage our own happiness. So it may not be that a person's not right for us or that we were incompatible. We just uneducated how to relate to each other. That's unfortunate. I see it so much. That's why I wanted to share this. Stage 2. In this stage, we become aware of the high costs of assuming responsibility for others' feelings and trying to accommodate them at our own expense. When we notice how much of our lives we've missed and how little we have responded to the call of our own soul, we may get angry. I refer jokingly to this stage as the obnoxious stage because we tend toward obnoxious comments like, that's your problem. I'm sure we all know people like this, or we felt this way. That's your problem. I'm not responsible for your feelings. When presented with another person's pain, we are clear that we are not responsible. We are clear what we are not responsible for, but have yet to learn how to be responsible to others, not for them, but to them, in a way that is not emotionally enslaving. So we're starting to learn, but we haven't quite come all the way. As we emerge from the stage of emotional slavery, we may continue to carry remnants of fear and guilt around having our own needs. Thus, it is not surprising that we end up expressing our needs in ways that sound rigid and unyielding to the ears of others. For example, during a break in one of my workshops, a young woman expressed appreciation for the insight she'd gained into her own state of emotional enslavement. When the workshop resumed, I suggested an activity to the group. The same young woman then declared assertively, I'd rather do something else. I sensed she was exercising her newfound right to express her needs, even if they ran counter to those of others. To encourage her to sort out what she wanted, I asked, do you want to do something else, even if it conflicts with my needs? She thought for a moment and then stammered, yes, no. Her confusion reflects how, in the obnoxious stage, we have yet to grasp that emotional liberation entails more than simply asserting our own needs. I recall an incident during my daughter Marla's passage toward emotional liberation. She had always been the perfect little girl who denied her own needs to comply with the wishes of others. When I became aware of how frequently she suppressed her own desires in order to please others, I talked to her about how I'd enjoy hearing her express her needs more often. When we first broached the subject, Marla cried, but Daddy, I don't want to disappoint anybody, she protested helplessly. I tried to show Marla how her honesty would be a gift more precious to others than accommodating them to prevent their upset. I also clarified ways she could empathize with people when they were upset without taking responsibility for their feelings. A short time later, I saw evidence that my daughter was beginning to express her needs more openly. A call came from her school principal, apparently disturbed by a communication he'd had with Marla, who had arrived at school wearing overalls. "Marla," he said, "young women do not dress this way." To which Marla had responded, "Bug off." Hearing this was cause for celebration. Marla had graduated from emotional slavery to obnoxiousness. She was learning to express her needs and risk dealing with the displeasure of others. Surely she had yet to assert her needs comfortably and in a way that respected the needs of others, but I trusted this would occur in time. Stage 3. At the third stage, emotional liberation, we respond to the needs of others out of compassion, never out of fear, guilt, or shame. Our actions are therefore fulfilling to us as well as to those who receive our efforts. Also, sometimes it doesn't, some of us are aware when people are responding to our requests or doing things for us out of a place of guilt, shame, or fear. And it doesn't feel very good and can ironically make us also feel guilty, ashamed, or fearful. And that's not helpful either. So emotional liberation and responding to others' needs out of compassion because we want to is better for everyone. We accept full responsibility for our own intentions and actions, but not for the feelings of others. That's really important. We may not be responsible for other people's feelings, but we are responsible for our own intentions and our actions. At this stage, we are aware that we can never meet our own needs at the expense of others. Emotional liberation involves stating clearly what we need in a way that communicates we are equally concerned that the needs of others be fulfilled. Nonviolent communication is designed to support us in relating at this level. Summary. The third component of nonviolent communication is the acknowledgement of the needs behind our feelings. What others say and do may be the stimulus for, but never the cause of our feelings. When someone communicates negatively, we have 4 options as to how to receive their message. 1, blame ourselves. 2, blame the other person or even third parties. 3, sense our own feelings and needs. 4, sense the feelings and needs hidden in the other person's negative message, which can be hard, but it can be done. Judgments, criticisms, diagnoses, and interpretations of others are all alienated expressions of our own needs and values. When others hear criticism, they tend to invest their energy in self-defense or counterattack. The more directly we can connect our feelings to our needs, the easier it is for others to respond compassionately. So I do want to point out something that's very helpful. It's not only sensing the feelings and needs hidden in other people's negative communications, but like, for example, if you have recently negatively communicated with another person, or if you're thinking those judgments and criticisms about someone in your own mind and responding internally, internalizing all that negativity, you may consider trying to get in touch with your own needs and feelings in this way. Like, what's behind this reaction, this judgment, this criticism? What needs not being fulfilled? And digging in yourself is very illuminative. So, also going to repeat this because it's important. When others hear criticism, they tend to invest their energy in self-defense or counterattack. And when we think criticism about others to ourselves, we also close ourselves off to really seeing the other person as like a human. We dehumanize the people we judge. The more directly we can connect even if the other person tries to connect with us, we can be closed off. The more directly we can connect our feelings to our needs, the easier it is for others to respond compassionately. In a world where we are often harshly judged for identifying and revealing our needs, doing so can be very frightening, especially for women or other people who are socialized to ignore their own needs while caring for others. In the course of developing emotional responsibility, most of us experience 3 stages. 1, emotional slavery, believing ourselves responsible for the feelings of others. 2, the obnoxious stage, in which we refuse to admit to caring what anyone else feels or needs. And 3, emotional liberation, in which we accept full responsibility for our own feelings, but not the feelings of others, while being aware that we can never meet our own needs at the expense of others. So next follows nonviolent communication in action, which shares a specific example story, and then follows an exercise. So we are heading to the end soon. So this example is a good one because it does reflect a highly inflammatory situation. I will preface it with that. A student of nonviolent communication volunteering at a food bank was shocked when an elderly female coworker burst out from behind a newspaper. What we need to do in this country is bring back the stigma of illegitimacy. Like illegitimate children. The student's habitual reaction to this kind of statement would have been to say nothing, to judge the other severely but silently, and eventually to process her own feelings safely away from the scene. This time, she remembered she had the option of listening for the feelings and needs behind the words that had shocked her. I'll check in with the comments after this story. So the student, first checking out her guess as to what the coworker was observing, says, "Are you reading something about teenage pregnancies in the paper?" Her coworker says, "Yes, it's unbelievable how many of them are doing it." The student, now listening for the coworker's feeling and what unmet need might be giving rise to this feeling. She says, "Are you feeling alarmed because you like kids to have stable families?" Her coworker says, "Of course. Do you know, my father would have killed me if I had done anything like that." The student says, "So you're remembering how it was for the girls in your generation who got pregnant?" The coworker says, "Sure thing. We knew what would happen to us if we got pregnant. We were scared about it all the time, not like these girls nowadays." The student says, "Are you annoyed that there's no fear of punishment for the girls who get pregnant these days?" The coworker says, "Well, at least fear and punishment worked. It says here that there are girls sleeping around with different men just so they can get pregnant. That's right, they have babies and the rest of us in society have to pay for it." The student of nonviolent communication heard 2 different feelings in this statement: astonishment that girls would deliberately get pregnant, and annoyance that taxpayers end up paying for children born in this way. She chose which feeling to empathize with. The student says, "Are you astonished to realize that people are getting pregnant these days without any consideration for reputation, consequences, financial stability, all the things you used to consider?" The coworker says, "Yeah, and guess who ends up paying for it?" The coworker, probably feeling heard around her astonishment, moved on to our other feeling, that of annoyance. As often happens when there is a mixture of feelings present, the speaker will return to those that have not yet received empathic attention. It is not necessary for the listener to reflect back a complex mixture of feelings all at once. The flow of compassion will continue as each feeling comes up again in its turn. The student says, "Sounds like you're exasperated because you'd like your tax money to be used for other purposes. Is that so?" The coworker says, "Certainly is. Do you know that my son and his wife want a second child and they can't have one even though they have 2 jobs because it costs so much?" The student says, "I guess you're sad about that. You'd probably love to have a second grandchild." The coworker says, "Yes, and it's not just for me that it would make a difference." The student says, "And for your son to have the family he wants," parentheses, even though the student guessed only partially correctly, she did not interrupt the flow of empathy, instead allowing the coworker to continue and realize another concern. The coworker says, "Yes, I think it's sad to be a single child too." The student says, "Oh, I see. You'd like for Katie to have a little brother." The coworker says, "That would be nice." At this point, the student sensed a release in her coworker. A moment of silence elapsed. She felt surprised to discover that while she still wanted to express her own views, her urgency and tension had dissipated because she no longer felt adversarial towards her coworker. She understood the feelings and needs behind her coworker's statements and no longer felt that the two of them were worlds apart. The student, expressing herself in nonviolent communication using all four parts of the process, which is observation, feeling, need, and request. She says, "You know, when you first said that we should bring back the stigma of illegitimacy, I got really scared because it really matters to me that all of us here share a deep caring for people needing help. Some of the people coming here for food are teenage parents, and I want to make sure they feel welcome. Would you mind telling me how you feel when you see Dashall or Amy and her boyfriend walking in?" The dialogue continued with several more exchanges until the woman got the reassurance she needed that her coworker did indeed offer caring and respectful help to unmarried teen clients at the food bank. Even more importantly, what the woman gained was a new experience in expressing disagreement in a way that met her needs for honesty and mutual respect. In the meantime, the coworker left satisfied that her concerns around teen pregnancy had been fully heard. Both parties felt understood and the relationship benefited from their having shared their understanding and differences without hostility. And in the absence of nonviolent communication, their relationship might have begun to deteriorate from this moment, and the work they both wanted to do in common, helping people eat, might have suffered. So next is an exercise, but I'm going to tune into the comments here. Cynthia shares again, and I'm sure other people can relate. "I grew up in the 70s and we were disciplined to obey the rules. One was to be quiet when the adults were talking. They called us behave. We didn't really share feelings. I think things are changing now." Me too. Change is slow, but I do believe that with each year, each generation, we become more open, more sensitive to these patterns and how damaging they can be. All right. So next is an exercise, acknowledging needs. To practice identifying needs, I'm going to read a few statements, and what your part is to identify statements where the speaker is acknowledging responsibility for their own feelings versus not doing that. And I'll go one statement at a time. "You irritate me when you leave company documents on the conference room floor." This is acknowledging responsibility for their feelings or not. "If you said yes, we're not in agreement. To me, this statement implies that the other person's behavior is solely responsible for the speaker's feelings. It doesn't reveal the needs or thoughts that are contributing to the speaker's feelings." To do so, the speaker might have said, "I'm irritated when you leave company documents on the conference room floor because I want our documents to be safely stored and accessible." The next statement is this person acknowledging responsibility for their feelings. "I feel angry when you say that because I am wanting respect and I hear your words as an insult." If you said, "Yes, we are in agreement," the speaker is acknowledging responsibility for his or her feelings. A pretty good sentiment to remember in relationship fights, as it were. When someone says something accusatory or inflammatory or critical, instead of lashing back or blaming yourself, you can say, "I feel angry when you say that," or "I feel sad when you say that," or "I feel I think I already said hurt when you say that because I am wanting respect and I hear yours as an insult." So that's a good one to remember. The next statement is, I feel frustrated when you come late. This person acknowledging responsibility for their feelings. If you said yes, we're not in agreement. To express the needs or thoughts underlying their feelings, the speaker might have said, I feel frustrated when you come late because I was hoping we'd be able to get some front row seats. The next statement is this person acknowledging responsibility for their own feelings. I'm sad that you won't be coming for dinner because I was hoping we could spend the evening together. If you said yes, we're in agreement that the speaker is acknowledging responsibility for their feelings. The next statement, I feel disappointed because you said you would do it and you didn't. Is this speaker acknowledging responsibility for their feelings? If you said yes, we're not in agreement. To express the needs and thoughts underlying their feelings, the speaker might have said, when you said you'd do it and then didn't, I felt disappointed because I want to be able to rely upon your words. That's also another good example to keep in mind in heated relationship discussions, because plenty of fights are started by someone saying they would do like a chore or an errand and then not doing it, or some other promise. When you said that you would do blank and then didn't, I felt disappointed because I want to be able to rely upon your words. Or you might even say, because I really needed such and such done. The next statement is this person acknowledging responsibility for their feelings. I'm discouraged because I would have liked to have progressed further in my work by now. If you said yes, we're in agreement that the speaker is taking responsibility for their feelings. The next statement is, little things people say sometimes hurt me. This person taking responsibility for their feelings. If you said yes, we're not in agreement. To express the needs and thoughts underlying their feelings, the speaker might have said, sometimes when people say little things, I feel hurt because I want to be appreciated, not criticized. Reasonable. The next statement, I feel happy that you received that award. Is this person acknowledging responsibility for their feelings? If you said yes, we're not in agreement. To express the needs and thoughts underlying their feelings, the speaker might have said, when you received that award, I felt happy because I was hoping you'd be recognized for all the work you put into the project. It may seem odd in like positive statements that it matters, but for example, in a really subtle way, I feel happy that you received that award suggests that the person's accomplishment is responsible for your feeling of happiness, like they have that effect on you. They're like in a way responsible for your happiness. So the other thing acknowledges your need to see someone you care about be acknowledged for their effort. The next statement, I feel scared when you raise your voice. Is this person acknowledging responsibility for their feelings? You said yes, we're not in agreement. To express the needs and thoughts underlying their feelings, the speaker might have said, when you raise your voice, I feel scared because I'm telling myself someone might get hurt here, and I need to know that we're all safe. In other instances, because I feel like it's relevant, you might also say, when you raise your voice, I feel scared because this reminds me of things that have happened in the past, and it makes me, or sorry, that's not violent. I feel worried about that happening again, and I need to know that we're all safe. I mean, essentially, it's the same sentiment. I need the need for safety, regardless of where that fear is coming from. The last statement. I'm grateful that you offered me a ride because I was needing to get home before my children arrive. This person taking responsibility for their feelings. If you said yes, we're in agreement that they are taking responsibility for their feelings. All right, that concludes this chapter. And I hope to read more chapters later. But that is it for the day. So I hope that this was helpful and useful information. I absolutely recommend this book, Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life by Marshall Rosenberg. If you go to the video description, you can find the Amazon link. You don't have to buy it through Amazon. It's just sort of like, so you can see the book, what it looks like. I have it as an ebook myself. It can really change your mind, your perspective, how you perceive things, how you interpret and live your life, how you respond to other people. It can change your whole world. It can change your relationships, the kind of relationships you engage in. It has the potential to save bad relationships. It's not a guarantee, but it can go a long way to facilitating that, facilitating difficult situations, and helping you be present for others and for yourself in a new way. And again, I find it very relevant to law of attraction, because there's not like a lot of practical ideas of like, how do you change? Why does it matter to change your mind? And this is something that makes it explicitly clear. Like when you are in touch with your feelings and needs, you don't interpret what other people hear as criticism. You don't take it personally. You instead observe, what is this person actually feeling? Or just having that detachment leads you to just having a better day and a better interaction. All right. Take care of yourselves, and thanks for watching. Be blessed. I'll see you all again soon.